And they disagreed radically over points of doctrine. In fact, they detested each other. But suddenly, those who do not like each other are united in a shared hatred for somebody else. Funny how that works, isn't it? You can see it even in an office. Two people that never discuss things with one another. People who do not get along with one another. When the opportunity comes to topple somebody that it would be in the best interest of both of them to topple, then they're prepared to bury the hatchet of their own animosity in order that they might unite to bring down this figure whom they both despise. And that's what's happening here. They were prepared to set aside their differences and with subtle cunning and abominable deceitfulness to make sure that Jesus was put to death. Is it much of a reach to suggest to you this morning that the same thing continues to happen on the stage of world religions? Are you noticing the way in which those who in the religions of the world disagree radically with one another at points of significant doctrine, whether it is Islam or Buddhism or Hinduism or Shintoism or Confucianism, disagreeing with one another at all kinds of points, seeking to substantiate their own claims and lead their own people? Isn't it interesting that one of the only points of unanimity that you can find on the stage of world religion is a unified hatred of Jesus of Nazareth? A hatred of Jesus of Nazareth. Not necessarily a hatred of organized Christianity. Not necessarily a hatred of formalized Roman Catholicism or a hatred of Protestant liberalism, but a hatred of Jesus of Nazareth. Of all things we will not tolerate this Christ who stands on the stage of human history and says, I am the way and the truth and the life, and no one comes to the Father but by me. We will have none of that. And those who actually are at loggerheads with one another today unite in order, as it were, to crucify Christ all over again and to drive him from the place of influence and power which is his by sovereign right. So Jesus, having confessed to be the Messiah, they then interpret this for Pilate. Look at the end of verse 2. He opposes payment of taxes to Caesar, and he claims to be Christ, a king. In other words, Pilate, we don't want you to miss this. I know you don't really care much about this Messiah business, but we want you to know what it means. If he is Christ, then he is king. If he is king, then Pilate, Caesar has a problem. And if Caesar has a problem, Pilate, you've got a problem. And we are here today to suggest to you, Pilate, that you deal with this problem. He stirs up disaffection and insurrection. He encourages the people to oppose the payment of taxes to Caesar. And he actually claims to be a king. So it's no surprise then that Pilate's first question is that true, Jesus? Verse 3, so Pilate asked Jesus, are you the king of the Jews? Now, since we don't have a recording of this, we don't know the intonation in his voice. I've been intrigued by this week. I've been going around my room asking the question in all kinds of different ways, with a rising inflection and a lowering inflection, and with incredulity and with curiosity and with animosity and so on. There are a million ways that you can say, are you the king of the Jews? And it's conjecture on my part, but I wonder whether he looks at this figure, this bound Galilean carpenter, and actually in the Greek the first word is you, it's not are you. He says, you're the king of the Jews? I mean, is this what I'm supposed to be worrying about? You? That may not be that. Maybe he said, are you the king of the Jews? I don't think so. Pilate hadn't got to this position because he was inadequate or incapable. No, Pilate was a sophisticate. Pilate was a political animal. Pilate would probably have risen to the highest realm of political maneuvering in any generation and at any time by dint of his personality and his capacity to read things. Because you see, Pilate obviously sees through the accusation of these Jews. He is sharp enough to catch their plot. But he's not morally strong enough to do what should be done. He knows this is a fraud. But he somehow or another cannot find it in himself to follow through on that basis. To simply say, listen, this is a crock that you're bringing before me here. I want all you religious authorities to clear off. And I want you, Jesus, whoever and whatever you are, to get back out into the thoroughfare of life. But he doesn't do it. Sharp enough to figure it out and too weak to do what he ought to do. Can I pause and make an application here again? I think there are some of you who come routinely to Parkside. Intelligent, thoughtful, shrewd enough to figure it out. You're not going to buy the nonsense that all roads lead to heaven like they lead to Timbuktu. You've already concluded that one way may be right and the rest may be wrong. Or every way may be wrong. But you're too smart to conclude that every way is right. So you've narrowed your options down sufficiently, and you may even have come to a convinced conviction in your own mind concerning the truth of Jesus, but still you do not bow beneath his lordship. Still you do not believe in him. Still you will not bow your will to him. And the reason is you're not brave enough. You're not tough enough. You're frightened to go back into the laboratory at Case and have your eminent scientific friends say, you don't mean it. You have not capitulated to the notion that Jesus of Nazareth is your Savior and friend, and you just can't get there. Or that your business colleagues who have regarded you as astute and influential, you just can't imagine having to say to them on a business trip, well, you know, I believe that Jesus is my Savior and my Lord and my friend. You're smart enough to get to where you need to be to believe, but you're not brave enough to believe. I issue you a challenge today. Take your stand with Christ. Do not do a Pilate on the issue of what you know to be factual, staring you in the face. You can see through the fraudulence of every other suggestion. But still, you are an unconverted believer. Well, if there was a rush to judgment on the part of the Sanhedrin, it was certainly equally speedy. The verdict that came from Pilate. Verse 4, I find no basis for a charge against this man. You can imagine him saying, there's nothing I can find wrong here. He seems harmless enough to me. But this wasn't what they wanted to hear. They're not about to wait for the Court of Appeals to be called. They don't want to lose the momentum here. During the night, they had arrested him. They had begun to formulate their strategy. They had called their council together in the morning. They had got an incriminating statement out of him. They had hauled him before Pilate, and everything seemed to be going fine. And now Pilate issues his verdict and says, sorry, I don't find a problem here. And so they protest immediately. They insist. General charge. Look at this. He stirs up the people all over Judea by his teaching. Oh, yes, he does. There was truth in that, wasn't there? Not in the way they were suggesting, not in terms of an insurrection, but sure, he was stirring up people. Stirred up blind Bartimaeus, didn't he? Son of David, have mercy on me. And Jesus healed him and he went down the road. stirred up the community in Nain when the funeral procession was going down the street, and the widow whose son was on the funeral bier was encountered by this Galilean carpenter who stopped the funeral procession and reached out and began speaking to a corpse. That would stir up the community.